But let me tell you this. I am no pervert.
Usually, when you catch us here, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Spotify, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, whether you're on some, other site, we try to keep it light. We joke about staying on the rails. I mean, even as unfortunate as it is, we did the Curse One Wild episodes a while back. Tried to throw little goofs, little gaffes out there to keep everyone uplifted. This might be the first time that we can't really keep it light. This opening is probably the lightest. This is going to be Vince McMahon back in the news again. Papa Vince, Daddy McMahon. There's a lot of legal documents to go through. And it's pretty damning. We don't suspect that by the time this is released, Vince may even have a job. Realistically, he probably should have just stayed retired. He shouldn't have tried this power trip. I think he did this power trip because he thought none of this would come to light. It's a lot. Buckle up, strap in. Anthony's going to walk us down every piece of a 60-page-ish document.
Yeah, and I think the reason we're going to do it this way is I think every other wrestling podcast out there, they're going to summarize it. They're going to have put their opinions on it. They're going to say how disgusting it is.
Which it clearly is. We wouldn't be adding to the discourse.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, this comes out Friday morning, the 26th. If you're on, just a side note, a little tip for viewers: if this is your first time listening, or if you're somebody that listens to a lot of our podcasts, do follow us on Spotify and Apple Pods, because those get released like immediately after we upload them. I upload it to there right away, and it's usually the next morning for YouTube. So if you're somebody that's only on YouTube, try going to one of those and listen there if you want something a little bit earlier, maybe like 12 hours early, if that's something you want. But every other podcast, they're going to give their opinions on it, which we will too from time to time. So Logan, if you ever want to interject into doing this, please feel free. But I feel like it'd be better to just read to you everything that's said by Mrs. Grant here, and you come to your own opinions on it, which you're probably not going to differ from many others, but I just don't see many podcasts out there that's just going to give it to you straight up. It gets pretty vulgar. I'm going to try to censor myself a little bit, but I'll try to keep it intact as much as I can.
Yeah, this one, I wouldn't say that our podcast is necessarily for children, but this one's certainly not. This is going to have some, just from the things that I've seen today that Anthony sent me, a couple little snippets. It's shocking, and as things go for longtime listeners, we're proven wrong again. Bray Wyatt had his unfortunate passing. CM Punk came back to the WWE, and now here's Vince, our three just little devils we can't get away from. And who knows, by the time this year's said and done, Punk could main event WrestleMania and Wyatt could headline. So it's a revolving door for us. But without further ado, Anthony, take it away.
Yep, so this was filed on January 25th of 2024, today as we record it. It's Janelle Grant versus World Wrestling Entertainment Incorporated, LLC, Vincent K. McMahon, and John Laurinaitis as your defendants. Jury trial demanded. I'm trying to skip over some of the legalese stuff here in the first complaint. Introduction. Plaintiff Janelle Grant is a former employee of WWE who was the victim of physical and emotional abuse, sexual assault, and trafficking at WWE. Miss Grant is filing this lawsuit not just to address her own suffering, but also to act for those who are afraid to speak out. So there was more than one. I think we knew that already.
That definitely makes sense. I know today on Twitter, Maria Canales, Maria Bennett, whatever you know her as, to summarize, she was thanking God for all of that she survived, and I know that she's been one that's spoken out against Vince, and I mean, with her history of Diva Search, backstage interviewer, Playboy Bunny, I would imagine she's seen and possibly been through some things as well.
WWE's billionaire, founder, and executive chairman, defendant Vincent K. McMahon lived in a penthouse duplex in Miss Grant's apartment building. The two met in March of 2019 when Miss Grant was dealing with profound grief and struggling financially. After devoting years to around-the-clock caregiving, her parents passed away. On top of that, she was unemployed and her family home was lost in her parents' bankruptcy. After her family passed away, Miss Grant dedicated herself to finding gainful employment. Neighbors in her building provided her career advice and sought out her assistance with personal events. Miss Grant used these non-paying roles and volunteer work in community initiatives to build her resume. The building's resident manager wanted to help. She messaged McMahon to ask whether he would talk to her, sharing that Miss Grant has been through hardship and would do great things if given a fresh start. McMahon enthusiastically responded, "Hell yes."
Right now, I'm just, I don't know how to describe it besides the emoji face where the teeth is showing.
Yeah.
It's just, that's
Like, you know what's coming.
That's me right now, yeah.
McMahon befriended Miss Grant, giving her hopes of a new life with promises of a yet-to-be-determined role at WWE, and showering her with attention and assurances, along with gifts like a VIP experience at WrestleMania. But what seems like a dream in the spring of 2019 quickly became a nightmare. As McMahon dangled career-making and life-changing promises in front of Miss Grant, he demonstrated an increasing lack of boundaries. During several meetings that were substantially about a potential job at WWE, he greeted her in his underwear, touched her, repeatedly asked for hugs, and spent hours sharing intimate details about his personal life. McMahon warned Miss Grant to keep their closeness, quotes, secret, lest rumors lead to public trouble, and added that, while he protects loyal people, he had world-class legal resources on speed dial to deal with people who become a problem. As such, when McMahon pushed Miss Grant for a physical relationship in return for a long-promised employment at WWE, she felt trapped in an impossible situation. Submitting to McMahon's sexual demands or facing ruin, Miss Grant feared she had everything to lose and faced negative consequences no matter what happened. After succumbing to the pressure for a physical relationship, Miss Grant was slotted into an entry-level position as an administrator coordinator, a position McMahon created for her in WWE's legal department. Miss Grant began work in that role on June 17th, 2019. Miss Grant remained in that role with the exception of a temporary relocation to the XFL until McMahon verbally directed her to transfer to the Talent Relations Department, reporting to defendant John Laurinaitis on March 9th, 2021. During a conversation on the same day, McMahon explained that her presence in the legal department was effectively delaying efforts to hire a new general counsel for the company. McMahon and Laurinaitis informed Miss Grant that she would be promoted to Vice President of Operations in the Talent Relations Department, providing her with an organizational chart reflecting this decision. Shortly thereafter, they informed her that they needed her to begin in the lower level as a director, but promised her promotion to Vice President after a 12-month period. Despite Miss Grant's expressions of unhappiness and attempts to end the sexual relationship, and while she came to the understanding that McMahon expected the physical relationship to continue as part of her employment, she had no idea how sordid it would become, nor how the physiological torture and physical violence would leave her feeling helpless, isolated, and trapped. In March 2020, McMahon began sharing sexually explicit photographs and videos of Miss Grant, including pornographic content he recorded, with other men both inside and outside the company, including with members of the television production tech team, executives, producers, and world-famous athlete and former UFC champion with whom WWE was actively trying to sign to a new contract, and ultimately did sign that contract.
So, you said, you mentioned television and all that. This has to be why Kevin Dunn was recently released, right?
I don't want to make assumptions, especially if I don't want to name anybody. But
it's just a little. It's a little fishy that it was less than a month ago.
If I was him, I would come out with a statement. Then, if it's not him, like a direct statement that he had nothing to do with it, not like I don't wish to comment at this time type deal. Because if you say that, well,
because you mentioned the UFC guy, and I know that's what he said. He didn't want to comment.
We'll see. Where was I? Given McMahon's omnipotent position at WWE, coercion was inherent in his increasingly depraved sexual demands. Specifically, while McMahon was CEO of WWE and Miss Grant was employed as an entry-level coordinator in the legal department, McMahon recruited individuals to have sexual relations with Miss Grant or with the two of them. And
two of them.
He directed Miss Grant to visit defendant Laurinaitis prior to the start of workdays for sexual encounters, and expected and directed Miss Grant to engage in sexual activity at WWE headquarters, even during working hours.
Do we know, is John Laurinaitis still married to the Bella's moms?
I'll do a quick Google search.
I would suspect after this, it's probably a big no. But
according to Google, the Wikipedia thing on the side, they're still married.
Yeah, that can't be for long.
Yeah, he's all over the news, so.
Yeah, his life is done so.
Yeah, we'll see later. Vince McMahon does not have much faith in him anyway.
Oh.
So, well, we'll see. We'll get to there.
No faith in people power.
All this time, McMahon ordered Miss Grant to keep their relationship secret unless otherwise instructed, including lying to maintain whatever cover stories he fabricated. McMahon's assurances that Miss Grant was safe and independent rang hollow in light of his efforts to isolate her from friends and attempts to chip away at her identity until it was replaced with his desired role for her as his bitch and his fantasy and or his porn star, while occasionally intermixing softer descriptors like girlfriend and baby and even love when convenient.
His porn star, of course.
He exercised complete ownership and control over both her personal and professional lives. McMahon also subjected Miss Grant to acts of extreme cruelty and denigration that caused Miss Grant to dissociate and or become numb to reality in order to survive the horrific encounters. As one example of McMahon's extreme depravity, on May 9th, 2020, he defecated on Miss Grant during a threesome and then commanded her to continue pleasuring his friend with feces in her hair and running down her back while McMahon went to the bathroom to shower off. Upon his return from the bathroom, McMahon and his friend actively resumed the threesome, which lasted over an hour and a half, while Miss Grant remained covered in McMahon's filth. When McMahon's friend left, McMahon ordered her to stay and continue to sexually gratify him.
Does this, I mean, again, trying to connect dots here. the whole Kiss My Ass Club thing was just a sick, perverted fantasy of his, wasn't it?
It might have been.
Like, clearly, he has a thing with his own ass and humiliating people with it.
In June of 2021, McMahon and defendant Laurinaitis sexually assaulted Ms. Grant inside Laurinaitis' office in WWE headquarters while colleagues were busy at their desks.
What?
Behind a locked door, the two men cornered her and pulled her in between them, forcibly touched her before ultimately putting her on top of the table in between them. She begged them to stop, but they forced themselves on her, each taking turns restraining her for the other, while saying, "No means yes," and "Take it, bitch." Unsurprisingly, others at WWE knew what was going on, but instead of intervening to protect Miss Grant, WWE actively sought to conceal the wrongdoing.
Of course, yep.
In January 2022, McMahon told Ms. Grant that his wife had found out about their relationship. Purportedly to avoid divorce, negative publicity, and other repercussions, McMahon said that Ms. Grant's time at WWE was at an end, but he wanted her to sign an NDA to ensure her silence on, among other things, his personal misconduct. In the days ahead, McMahon put Ms. Grant under immense pressure to sign, saying that refusing would only jeopardize McMahon, his family, and the company, but that she'd surely become a public headline, suffer reputational ruin, including from the pornographic content McMahon had captured, and face McMahon's legal resources. Conversely, McMahon reassured her that her signature would ensure his continued support and protection and safeguard her reputation. Ultimately, Ms. Grant succumbed to the pressure and signed the NDA in exchange for payments, which later McMahon stopped making.
I guess while we're at this point, does it list a lot of the payments in here? A lot of his supposed gifts.
We'll get there.
Okay, so I don't have to read the tweet that I sent you with the examples.
If we save it for later,
okay.
If it doesn't get into it, and then I'll go like a couple pages.
Because I know, of course, you've got the scum on Twitter who's trying to say she's just trying to get money, this and that. She's already gotten the gifts she's been given probably add up to more than I will ever make in my lifetime. So I don't think it's about money at this point.
No, definitely not. And that's such a bullshit thing to say. I hate when people say that.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like famous people sexually assault regular people. That happens way more than you think.
Well, yeah, especially this was 2019, so Vince is in his 70s. Him and Linda haven't been happy for like 100 years. He's kind of a dick, so of course he's going to force himself. I mean, there's no way to, like, people trying to justify it blow me away. And then on the flip side, you have everyone trying to, if someone looked up to Vince as a father figure, they need to be put under a microscope. I don't think he shared this with, like, John Cena. I don't think when they were at a meeting, he was like, "Hey, John, look at this." Like, I'm sure certain people he did, which we'll get into a pretty big one. But I don't think... I'm pretty... This 2019 range, so I think that, like... a lot of people bring up Shawn Michaels. By 2019, that whole father-son relationship's been over. Undertaker, that whole father-son relationship's over. Like, people... This is... I said it at the beginning, or right before we got on. I hate that people are now using this as this specific wrestler likes he's scum. Ooh, WWE's like, try and leave the wrestling part out of it. Hate Vince, but I feel for people like Triple H, who I wouldn't think knew about this until Linda knew, and then he had to fight. I'm sure it's been an uphill climb to keep his job, with that being his father-in-law.
Yeah.
And the company he works for and truly loves. So I feel for someone like Triple H. And I'm going to say that now before, if something comes out later and he knew and he did things, I'll retract the statement. But as of right now, with what we know, I truly feel, besides the victim, obviously, for people like Paul Levesque. And even Stephanie. I'm sure having to come back to the company that you tried to retire from so you could step away and be a mother, because it turns out your father did all of this, because Linda probably told her, being her mother, and that being her father. Like, she's had to have been in mental ruin for the past 5 years now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is just... imagine their kids. Imagine even Shane's kids, like, hearing your grandfather did this. How do you... I wouldn't be able to function. Like, put yourself in Declan's shoes, right? In high school and college. You're a McMahon. You try and use I'm a McMahon. And then this comes out.
I'm a Shane O'Mac.
Yeah, I'm a Shane O'Mac. I'm not a Vince McMahon. I'm not a Vince McMahon. There's obviously it's terrible for the victim, but there's just so many other people that Vince completely just screwed the pooch on with this.
Yeah, it's reading ahead a little bit. We are going to get into the gifts given to plaintiff during time with WWE. That's a chapter.
Okay.
So we're still in chapter 1 or section 1.
Yeah. I just.
We're only 20 minutes in, bud.
20 minutes in, and yeah.
Even after pushing Miss Grant out of the company and muzzling her with an NDA, McMahon continued efforts to exploit her, including attempting to traffic her to a WWE star who would be in New York City for a live event and TV taping in March of 2022.
He did this after the NDA and making her give up her job.
Yep.
That's almost... It's all terrible, but that's almost worse, right?
So the NDA was signed around like January 2022-ish. And then March 2022, he was trying to send her to New York City. Understandably, defendant's predatory conduct has left Miss Grant crippled, both physically and mentally, including the debilitating symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and suicidal ideation. I think I'm pronouncing that right. These symptoms led to her termination from her subsequent job running the building's operations due to her inability to leave her home for weeks at a time. Despite McMahon's promise of reputational protection, WWE appears to have leaked information that led to the public disclosure of her name by a media blogger who cited a source in WWE with direct knowledge of the situation, which, upon information and belief, was an overt intimidation tactic aimed at Miss Grant.
Wait a second.
Do you know who that was?
Wait. Was that our buddy?
Well, not our buddy, but
yeah, like that said with a sarcastic tone.
That was Brad Shepard.
It's our little other fourth devil that follows us around. It was Brad Shepard that they leaked this info to.
Yep.
Jesus fuck.
I don't know if you remember, he even attempted to post pictures of her, but it was completely the wrong girl. It wasn't even her.
Oh my god. Oh, he is such a little... He's a weasel. He's just a little slimy... I don't want to say a cockroach because I want him to die if there's a nuclear war. I don't want there to be a chance Brad Shepard lives.
Strap him on the nuke.
Yeah, like he did... with all of this, Ringside News has to, fire him, too.
Well, he owns Ringside News.
I don't give a shit. Vince owned WWE.
True.
People need to stand up and...
Well, the problem is there's his audience is kind of like related to like people like Keemstar and that one other dumb fuck. Who's that one guy? Like that alpha male guy. You know what I'm talking about? What's his name?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like same kind of audience where
Gross.
they're gonna take this and turn it into like a big joke and say how
Of
awesome
course.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I doubt Brad Shepard. He'll be fine. This will probably rejuvenate him a little bit, honestly.
I hate it.
WWE also attempted to sweep the matter under the rug, following media reports that McMahon was involved in a hush money payment scandal. WWE released a statement in June of 2022 to announce that a special committee of its board of directors was investigating the alleged misconduct and appointing Stephanie McMahon as interim CEO and interim chairwoman. In this capacity, Ms. McMahon publicly affirmed her commitment to doing everything in her power to help the special committee complete its work and to implement its findings. She also declared that the importance of a safe and collaborative workplace. Notwithstanding this public statement, the investigation was a sham.
Yeah.
In November of 2022, WWE touted the conclusion of the special committee investigation into the misconduct, yet the special committee never even bothered to interview Ms. Grant or request any documents despite Ms. Grant stating that she would cooperate. In SEC filings, the company tries to divert attention away from McMahon's abuse of women by focusing on the technical issue of how the hush money was accounted for. In the words of the company, the issue was immaterial accounting errors related to certain payments that Mr. McMahon agreed to make during the period from 2006 through 2022.
And this is such a WWE thing, because for those that don't know, around the time of the steroid trials, there was a child sex trafficking issue that was brought up at WWE, and then the steroids were brought up. So this tends to happen when there's a larger issue at hand, which it's not just WWE, right? This goes all the way to our government. When there's a larger issue, they bring in another one, and they're like, but what about this?
Yeah.
What about forget that one? Forget that one. What about this one? And then people are like, wait, what about that one? And it's no, didn't happen. Remember, we got them with this big one. Remember? I hope, and this is gonna. I hope, even though Stephanie let it, I get this feeling, and again, this happens to corporations a lot. Corporations, companies. She was put at the head, but couldn't actually be directly involved. They did it to make it look like he was being investigated because it's his family. So it's like, gonna be the hardest on him. I just can't see. With all of the charitable work and be a star work, like it's not like when Vince ran the company and he just did tribute to the troops. He wasn't really involved. He threw the money at it. Stephanie's involved in these charities. She's involved in these events. Has her daughters. There's that pit of me that just wants it to be where she was forced to lead it, but a bunch of men in suits said, we'll take it. Because I don't know why else. I just hope Stephanie's better than that. I know Vince isn't. I know Linda isn't. Both from a character on here and from what I know in real life. I know Shane isn't. Stephanie's the one that I hope is better than that.
Through all this trauma, Miss Grant has endured profound suffering in silence, feeling of exploitation, loss of security, and the fear of facing the wrath of WWE and McMahon's army of attorneys if she were to come forward and bring to light the egregious acts detailed herein. The time has passed, and Miss Grant seeks to hold defendants accountable for their reprehensible and unlawful acts, for her own sake and for others. Ms. Grant seeks declaratory judgment that her NDA is invalid under federal and state laws and asserts that claims of the laws, including the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Okay, we're going to skip ahead here. They just list all the parties. like where their citizens at, blah 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 blah. Let's see. Okay.
Don't mind the noises in the background. It's just my dog's feeding time right now. We're recording probably 3 hours earlier than we would even begin to normally record. So if you hear the munch, and it's not me. If it was me, it'd be a lot more louder, and we'd probably lose a lot more fans with it. It's just a pretty 10-year-old dog eating. But don't mind it. Don't mind it.
So we'll go to the factual allegations here.
Okay.
A lot of this looks like some of it, some stuff we just read, but worded differently. I'll just go through it real quick. Prior to having any involvement with WWE, Ms. Grant was dealing with profound grief on loss of her parents, whom she cared for full time as the sole caretaker. After her family passed away, Ms. Grant dedicated herself to finding gainful employment during this time. Ms. Grant often ran to McMahon's 2 personal assistants in her building, one of whom was a former grade school classmate of Ms. Grant. Ms. Grant's close friends in the building was the resident manager. That individual is referred to herein as resident manager. Similar in personality, Ms. Grant and the resident manager bonded over stories of adversity as they coordinated community initiatives in the building together. The resident manager was aware of Ms. Grant's effort to obtain employment. In March of 2019, Ms. Grant remained unsuccessful in securing long-term employment. Resident manager offered to help Ms. Grant so she could reach out to defendant McMahon in case he could assist, and texted him to see if he'd be willing to speak with Ms. Grant and provide advice about employment.
How bad do you feel if you're the guy that recommended her to Vince?
You can't feel bad, though. Like, that's not your fault.
I know it's not your fault, but it's one of those things where I'm sure they sit at home and they're like, had I just not sent that text? Like, it's gotta eat him up. It's not his fault, but damn it. Like, he tried to do a good thing. Tried to help this grieving on the downswing of life, like, and just got so much worse. And honestly, her parents just died, and she probably didn't think it could get worse.
McMahon responded enthusiastically and proposed times to meet with Miss Grant to discuss employment. The resident manager passed along Miss Grant's resume to McMahon ahead of the prospective meeting. Ahead of the meeting, resident manager advised Miss Grant to be energetic, as McMahon is big on energy, and talk to McMahon no differently than she talks to the resident manager. On or about March 23rd, 2019, Miss Grant arrived for the meeting in McMahon's condo with additional printed copies of her resume, a black notepad, and thank you cookies.
Wow.
Sitting at his dining table, McMahon looked at Miss Grant's resume and complimented both her communication skills and common sense before discussing little about their personal lives. For example, Miss Grant told McMahon about the hardship that led to the resident manager's offer for help and described losing her parents, her family's bankruptcy, and other trauma that led her to seek financial independence to ensure she would never experience losing her home again. McMahon shared stories about his upbringing, his traumatic childhood, growing up in poverty, his current family dynamics, including his separation from Linda McMahon, described as his ex and, quote, long gone. He added his marital status as an arrangement on paper for business purposes, and that he lives in a quite isolated existence outside of WWE. At the end of the meeting, McMahon told Miss Grant that he didn't just want to give her a job, but give her a life, and that if it would help, he would find out a place for her at WWE.
I hate that he used he used the separation as, oh, I don't have a life outside of WWE. When, I mean, even casual fans know the stories of how, even when him and Linda were quote unquote happy, he has a gym at Titan Towers. He has chefs that bring him shit at Titan Towers. He even, there's rumors he had a room so he could sleep there. Like, it's not, that wasn't Linda's fault. Like, and then he made, we have to stay together for, God, he is a modern day P.T. Barnum. He truly is. Piece of shit who can spin yarn into gold.
Stunned, Miss Grant said that she didn't know how to thank him for possibly just changing my life. McMahon responded that one simple thank you was enough and that he'd accept a hug. They stood and embraced. McMahon then told Miss Grant that he'd get the ball rolling on the next steps, but it was a busy time of year as WWE prepared for WrestleMania, explaining that it was WWE's Super Bowl and that he invited Miss Grant to attend as his guest along with resident manager, and added that he would personally select their seats to have the best possible experience. McMahon advised her that his office would reach out to her to set up a meeting with a trusted official, WWE Corporate Officer number 2 at WWE headquarters. WWE Corporate Officer number 2, I kind of skipped over it. They have unnamed corporate employees. They'll kind of go in and out here. From what I can tell, at least me personally, I can't figure out if these are anybody we would know. After asking if her cell was the best number to reach her, McMahon shared his personal phone number with Miss Grant, walked her to his door, again hugged her while whispering, "So good." McMahon arranges for Miss Grant to be hired by WWE while beginning to groom her for sexual exploitation. On March 31st, 2019, the day before Miss Grant was scheduled to meet with the WWE Corporate Officer number 2, McMahon unexpectedly invited Miss Grant to come back to his condo for pointers for her meeting with WWE Corporate Officer number 2. When she arrived, McMahon gave a huge embrace and suggested they sit on the couch. It quickly became clear that McMahon had no intention on giving her pointers for an interview except for a single direction. If the topic comes up during her meeting, Ms. Grant could state they met through a mutual friend. During this meeting, McMahon described a surgery he had on his knee by touching Ms. Grant's leg and drawing a line where the surgery had taken place with his finger. He stated that, similar to rehabbing an injury, Ms. Grant cannot let scar tissue build up inside her from trauma, as her vulnerability is a gift. McMahon explained that people are intimidated around him and are afraid to touch him. McMahon added that he is an affectionate person who likes to hug and starves for physical affection. McMahon then led Miss Grant on a tour of his condo before hugging her goodbye, again whispering, "Feels so good."
Feels so good.
On April 1st, 2019, Miss Grant met with WWE Corporate Officer number 2 at WWE headquarters for a short time. The corporate officer hardly asked any questions, saying that WWE Corporate Officer number 2 was figuring out where Miss Grant would be placed and then promised to be in touch again after WrestleMania. Later that day, Miss Grant texted McMahon and enthusiastically described her meeting with WWE Corporate Officer number 2. She also commented on a dinosaur skull that she saw on McMahon's office wall, prompting the response, "By the way, if you're a bad girl, the T-Rex will eat you."
Oh my god.
Followed by, "Seriously, Janelle, wherever you land in WWE, you will be a credit to the organization." On April 7, 2019, Ms. Grant and resident manager were provided a VIP experience at WrestleMania, including private transportation in a black SUV arranged by McMahon. Per McMahon's instructions, Ms. Grant diligently took notes about her impressions from WrestleMania, her first time attending such an event. Miss Grant left overwhelmed with emotion and feeling hopeful that everything McMahon promised was becoming a reality. Over the next several weeks, McMahon invited Miss Grant to his condo on several occasions, each time assuring her that he would find the right position for her at WWE. For each meeting, the McMahon and Miss Grant brought sample job descriptions she found online to review with him and demonstrate the types of roles she might fit in. McMahon listened to Miss Grant, asked her questions, and pointed out qualities that he described as rare gifts, including her goodness.
Her goodness. Oh my god. I've had to interview people, and I would hit myself if someone, a skill I have is my goodness. Like, Jesus.
Childlike innocence and ability to be vulnerable.
Oh, come on. What a sick bastard. Oh. God. Childlike innocence. This is a 70-plus-year-old man, quote-unquote, interviewing a young woman.
McMahon also initiated... What's that?
He's not making it to the weekend. Midnight strikes. He's off board.
McMahon also initiated long physical embraces with Miss Grant, repeatedly telling her that he trusted her and he could be himself around her and how he'd open his home to her. During one visit to the condo in late April 2019, McMahon did not greet Miss Grant when she entered, but instead called her into his master walk-in closet. As soon as she turned the corner, McMahon emerged from his bathroom wearing only briefs. Shocked, Miss Grant turned around and apologized. As McMahon laughed and asked her to turn around, he then handed her a shirt and asked for help with the buttons. McMahon reminded her that he was working hard on her role, and said he felt good about her taking care of him. Around that time, McMahon also told Ms. Grant that he would never forget how helpless she looked when they first met, and that he wanted to wrap his arms around her and assured her that everything is going to be okay, and that Miss Grant's problems were in the past. McMahon also told Miss Grant that he viewed her as a true friend. However,
needs to take a seat, and he just needs to talk to like a Chris Hansen type. All of these are such, I don't want to say cliches, but calling her into the bedroom and only wearing briefs, and I can picture him standing there, arms on his hips, like superhero pose, and then when she turns around doing that McMahon laugh and turn back around, like.
However, McMahon advised Miss Grant that people at WWE can never know about their closeness, or else rumors would spawn and threaten them, particularly due to Miss Grant's physical beauty. McMahon also emphasized that the circumstances could jeopardize the company. Around this time,
because she's beautiful.
Yep.
Got it.
Around this time, he what's that?
So Vince McMahon is more of a created character than Mr. McMahon. Mr. McMahon is the real person, and Vince McMahon is the character.
They're one and the same. I don't think there's too much to differentiate between the two.
I'm saying the Vince McMahon of like the 80s, the on-screen, the good boy, the from Connecticut. That's a character.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
McMahon also emphasized that the circumstances could jeopardize the company. Around this time, he mentioned that he had an attorney on speed dial, whom he described as the best of the best at making problems, including people who become problems, go away. On April 21st, 2019, McMahon unexpectedly invited Miss Grant to his condo to provide her with an update. Upon her arrival, McMahon assured her, Miss Grant, that he was a man of his word, that his office would be in touch with her soon with the right role. As she turned to leave, McMahon grabbed a large, black, electric massager and told Miss Grant to turn around for a demonstration. He quickly moved to rubbing his hands on Miss Grant's upper back before reminding her that she would hear from his office about the next steps in a day or two. 2 days later, Miss Grant was contacted about further meetings at WWE. A week later, she met with 2 high-ranking human resources employees.
No.
Referred to here on as human resource employee number 1 and number 2, respectively. Both human resource employees provided Miss Grant with their impressions about the company culture at WWE and confirmed that the ball was in their court to figure out where she would best fit in at WWE. On May 5th, 2019, Miss Grant visited McMahon's condo again, and the topic of bucket lists came up, during which Miss Grant expressed that she always dreamed of attending the Belmont Stakes. McMahon responded that he would personally acquire 2 tickets for her, which Miss Grant said she could not accept. McMahon then stood up from his chair and knelt in front of the chair where Miss Grant was seated, blocking her from standing. He leaned in close to Miss Grant and told her to kiss him. Miss Grant paused and gave McMahon a kiss on his cheek, to which McMahon sighed. "That's not what I meant."
It's awful because I can hear him saying these things. And just for a brief pause, can you imagine you're someone, because she's still feeling down about her luck.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, and I know this is a power move by Vince, because whatever she would have said, he would have had happen. But imagine you're sitting there, you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of family, and you say the one thing you've always wanted to do, and this slimy fuck at the other end of the table goes, "I can get you tickets right now." What are you gonna do? I can do it. Like, I don't think there's many things she could have said that he couldn't have done. And he's not even being... He hasn't been coy this whole time, but that is clearly a power move. And then when she's like, "Oh, I can't do it," because you know he expected her to be like, "Oh my god, yeah, how can I repay you?" But when she said no, that she's like, I gotta kiss myself. I gotta get a live action kiss card.
Pretty expensive one.
Very expensive.
After McMahon walked off to his bedroom and said he wanted Miss Grant, she swiftly rejected his advances and tried to reason with him that he was putting her in a bad position. Miss Grant pled with McMahon to stop and to think about what he was doing. McMahon then begged repeatedly simply to hold Miss Grant. Out of fear for her employment and his earlier implied threats about his legal team dealing with problems, Miss Grant laid down in bed next to McMahon and kept her hands clasped and her ankles crossed, as she acquiesced in saying that he could only hold her, but nothing more. When Miss Grant tried to make small talk about WWE's TV storylines, McMahon suggested that she watch the next episode of Monday Night Raw and text him before the broadcast. After she agreed, he forcibly kissed her and began pulling down a strap on her sweater. Miss Grant then sat up and said she needed to leave and had a lot to process, and left. The next day, Miss Grant watched the show as promised and texted McMahon to wish him well. She was shocked when he appeared on the show and texted back in the middle of the live broadcast. "That was a very nice message. Made me smile." With this little smiley face.
Appeared on the show. Of course, I was curious why he wanted her to... In my head, because she tried to make small talk about it, I was just imagining he was essentially like, just watch it. I don't want to talk about it. But again, a power play is like, just watch. I'm curious, not that it matters, but was he actually scheduled to be on it, or was this a random appearance and he did it as a power play? Like, all right, I'm going to be on Raw tonight, guys. Why?
Well, let's see.
I'm just going to be on it.
May 6th, 2019, Raw.
I don't remember.
It's where he instituted the wild card rule.
Wild. Oh my god.
Yeah,
You know, if she would have known what that was, she probably would have just
She-
never texted him back.
Should have texted him, "Hey Vince, that's a shitty idea."
Yeah, 'cause I can just picture him laying there and watch Raw. And then as he's walking down to the ring in his head, he's amazed. That's right. I'm on TV. I'm on TV on the program I own. Be impressed. What a slimy bastard.
On May 9th, 2019, McMahon texted Miss Grant that she'll have a job at WWE by that Friday. The next day, Human Resources employee number 2 called Miss Grant to inform her that the WWE corporate officer number 4 would contact her at 4 p.m. to discuss a legal role. After her call, Miss Grant sent McMahon a thumbs-up text message to indicate that the call went well. Around 7 p.m., the corporate officer number 4 unexpectedly called her a second time and formally offered her a job, saying, "Welcome to WWE." On May 11th, 2019, McMahon invited Miss Grant to his condo again and asked her to lay in bed with him before informing her that he had ordered the corporate officer number 4 to offer her the job, even though a job description had not been firmed up beyond a high-level summary. While incredibly excited to finally receive a long-awaited employment and financial security, Miss Grant expressed to Mr. McMahon that he seemed to be conflicted between his doing this and his warning to Miss Grant that no one could know about their closeness. He appeared amused with this, replying, "It's my company." McMahon then undressed down to his briefs while Miss Grant remained clothed, and he began kissing Miss Grant and inserting his hands into her pants without consent. On May 16, 2019, McMahon informed Miss Grant that he obtained 2 tickets to the Belmont Stakes, scheduled for June 8, 2019. On May 17, 2019, Miss Grant received an offer letter from WWE for an entry-level job as the legal administrator coordinator with a salary of $75,000.
Wow.
On May 18, 2019, that's entry-level, by the way.
Yeah.
On May 18, 2019, McMahon summoned Miss Grant to his condo, and she brought a printed copy of the offer letter to review with him. McMahon informed Miss Grant that her new boss, a WWE employee who worked in risk and government relations, referred to as WWE employee number 1, was a decades-long family friend and confidant, similar in age to McMahon and one of a small original group, what McMahon calls the Titan family, who helped WWE expand from regional promotion to a global juggernaut.
Do we have any idea who that would be?
Not off the top of my head. We'd have to go. We'd have to look into it.
The only name that I'm curious if something comes up with in all this, I know that Vince and Bruce are pretty close too.
Yeah, I don't want to name names.
I don't want to either. We know John Laurinaitis is involved, but Bruce is also right in the McMahon grasp, so...
McMahon stated that outside of his attorney, WWE employee number 1 was the most feared figure in the company because WWE employee number 1 usually fired employees. Beyond that, he offered little detail about WWE employee number 1's role at WWE. Instead, he focused on employee number 1's personal traumas, explaining that similar to Miss Grant, employee number 1 had no family left after WWE employee number 1's spouse passed away. Now the McMahons and WWE were this employee's surrogate family. McMahon touted their loyalty, saying that they would be able to protect Miss Grant and then let her to his bedroom while giving her the command of, "Please don't stop this." During the May 18, 2019 encounter, Miss Grant felt coerced into engaging in sexual activity and that McMahon had trapped her in an impossible situation as she feared adverse career and personal consequences and legal retaliation if she declined his advances. McMahon stated, "This is what I've been waiting for," as he performed oral sex on Miss Grant. Miss Grant asked that protection be used, and McMahon responded that there's no need to worry because he was, quote, clean.
Oh my God.
Feeling that she was being used for his gratification, Miss Grant went numb and was unable to make eye contact. McMahon then flipped on his back and said, "Okay, jack him off."
Jack him off.
Disturbed by the non-consensual sexual encounter, she hoped that McMahon would cease his advances, but his advances continued and left her to fulfill his demands or lose his job. On June 16, 2019, the day before starting with WWE, Mr. Grant attempted to shut down any further physical contact or sexual encounters by admitting to McMahon her unhappiness and concern that starting her first ever job in his legal department, no less, while in a physical relationship with the chairman and CEO. She requested that they end any physical relationship while remaining friends to avoid any risks to either of them. McMahon refused, saying that it was not ending, it did not need to, and that he did not ever envision it ending. He reminded her that he trusted her, reiterated that rumors would lead to trouble, probed whether her silence would be an issue, and brushed off her concerns that she was struggling with the feeling that her job felt unearned. McMahon told Miss Grant that all she needed to do was not tell anyone, and that it just has to look legit. McMahon then spun the conversation and told Miss Grant to focus on the positives and embrace that her life was about to change, saying, "Isn't this what you've always wanted?" McMahon manipulatively emphasized that she's about to start an adventure and gain a new family with the WWE as a surrogate for the family she had lost. Ultimately, Miss Grant's unsuccessful attempt to end further unwanted physical contact quickly taught her that her view on the matter was not relevant.
Holy shit, the WWE's a cult. Like Titan Sports. He finds people without families and gives them this little bit. He's like, I'll keep giving you more if you... Jeez. Zowie. Oh my God.
On June 17, 2019, Miss Grant reported to WWE headquarters for her first day of work. With attorneys in glass offices and support staff in cubicles with low walls and tall monitors, it's easy to see how much other colleagues worked. As a quiet and small department, it was even easier to overhear their conversations. Miss Grant was immediately surprised that there was not much work assigned to her, struggling even to appear busy in her new role. In stark contrast, colleagues who complained about overflowing inboxes, Miss Grant's phone only overflowed with the controlling and sexually charged text messages from the chairman and CEO, reminding her both of McMahon's power and ever-present surveillance. Colleagues shared onboarding stories with Miss Grant and talked about receiving pre-made binders of information or the opportunity of shadow departing employees, none of which happened for Miss Grant, nor did anyone know what her unusual title of administrator coordinator meant. Miss Grant did not even meet WWE employee number 1 until her second week of employment. WWE employee number 1 was a lively individual who frequently regaled the legal department with stories of others at WWE. If McMahon's name was mentioned, WWE employee number 1 would turn to Miss Grant with a smile, a finger point, and or a comment that drew attention to her connection to McMahon, such as, "She knows what I'm talking about."
Oh my God.
WWE employee number 1 and Miss Grant bonded as quickly as McMahon had predicted. Miss Grant, referred to as a partner, was taught words to live by in WWE, including, "We do what's in the best interest of the company, protect the business, and if a man wants something, the answer isn't no, but rather how do we make it happen."
Oh my. I have an idea. I'm not going to say who or what. I'm just seeing when... Oh my God. If you mention that employee 1 passes away at the end of 2020, I think I know who it is. Oh my God. And now I'm in even more shambles because this is one of my, like, oh my god, this is him. This is,
Send me a message on Discord. Who do you think it is?
this is one of my wrestling, like, I have so much just, oh wait, you said wife. Never mind. I do not think he had a wife. I don't.
Well, they said spouse.
Jesus.
If that changes anything. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
It makes sense.
W employee number 1 was also impressed on Miss Grant's that job titles don't mean anything for members of McMahon's inner circle, and that she was clearly considered to be a part of. As W employee number 1 was seldom in the office and required little administrative support, Miss Grant reported indirectly to another W employee within the legal department, referred to from now herein as W employee number 2, who provided her with the occasional projects related to talent appearances and XFL that helped fill Miss Grant's time. Based on her hiring alone, W Corporate Officer number 4 was on notice that there was something different about Miss Grant, namely her connection to McMahon. As Miss Grant feared and expressed to McMahon, she was unhappy that a spotlight was unnecessarily put on her before she even set foot into the office. Miss Grant immediately noticed that the W Corporate Officer number 4 was warm with other colleagues, but cold towards her. Beginning in July of 2019, after Miss Grant raised an issue related to XFL's performance-enhancing drug policy with McMahon, W Corporate Officer number 4 behavior shifted from cold to actively hostile. If Miss Grant walked into a room while Corporate Officer number 4 was laughing with colleagues, Corporate Officer number 4's expression immediately became blank and would walk away. They have a Corporate Officer number 4 and Miss Grant walked towards each other in the hallway. They would stop and change directions. Colleagues noticed the shift in behavior. While some commented on it to Miss Grant, others emulated it. Notwithstanding the issues detailed above, Miss Grant took her employment seriously. In contrast, McMahon continued a pattern of sending sexually charged messages throughout the work week, certain her employment depended on her continued appeasement of and obedience to McMahon, and believed that she needed McMahon's protection from the suspicious Corporate Officer number 4 and others. Miss Grant found no choice but to respond in kind. From all this, Miss Grant...
damn it.
From all this, Miss Grant began experienced debilitating panic attacks in the office on a near daily basis that left her physically drained. She could not hide the physical symptoms of these attacks and texted the resident manager, "You should see the way people look at me when I'm having an attack." But while her coworkers noticed, no one dared to get involved. In the summer of 2019, McMahon's presence was all-consuming in Miss Grant's life. In the office, she felt monitored as she was surrounded by allies of McMahon, which led to continued daily panic attacks. Outside of the office, McMahon sexualized her entirely. He no longer referred to her as a friend and largely stopped talking to Miss Grant outside of sexting and fantasy talk. Any non-sexual texts related to life and or work were either ignored or given token responses like okay or yup. As detailed herein, McMahon was adamant about having Miss Grant send him explicit photographs, impressing upon her that it was part of her sexuality. Given the control that McMahon had over Miss Grant's employment, she felt compelled to comply and sent the explicit photographs to McMahon's mobile device. Miss Grant was routinely assured that the photographs she was providing to McMahon were to remain private and were part of their, quote, secret world. McMahon began to degrade Miss Grant, calling her his bitch, while hinting at a fascination with having other people watch them engage in sexual activity.
Mm.
Additionally, this complaint details encounters during which McMahon caused Miss Grant to sustain physical injuries, including bleeding and pain from forceful use of sex toys. Despite Miss Grant's plea to cease any further sexual activity, the number of sexual encounters increased, as McMahon's physical aggression during them. You're going to like this one.
Oh, boy.
Notably, McMahon was most aggressive when using the certain sex toys named after male WWE wrestlers and performers.
Stop it.
McMahon named the sex toys so that the color of the toy matched
No.
the race of the wrestler.
No.
For example,
No. Oh my God, there's examples.
a black dildo would be named after an African American wrestler, and a white dildo would be named after a Caucasian wrestler. In addition to McMahon's infatuation with pretending that other men, and namely certain WWE talent, were in the room with them, this was yet another incremental step in desensitizing Miss Grant to his fantasy and eventual demands that she perform sexual acts for and or have sexual contact with others within WWE. This is weird. During a David vs. Goliath type wrestling match in 2019.
Uh-huh.
Okay, think about what match this is. Ms. Grant shared with McMahon that her thoughts on the event, the draw of rooting for the underdog, and ideas for future events. McMahon complimented her creative input, and she believed she was being taken seriously, that is, until McMahon named a dildo after the smaller wrestler and attempted to sexualize the situation.
2019. Wait. Is that Kofi Mania?
I don't know. I can't think of any matches that happened in 2019 right now.
Well, isn't that when... Well, I guess David Goliath. Brock kind of killed Kofi, so that wasn't so much David Goliath. I mean, that's when the David Goliath storyline, like, where everything kept getting thrown at Kofi, though. I'm pretty certain. Oh, my God.
By the fall of 2019, McMahon frequently pressed for pornographic videos and more explicit content. When Miss Grant expressed the apprehension with his requests, McMahon responded with assurances that she could trust him, or questioned why she didn't trust him. McMahon also took care to remind Miss Grant of his power and influence, such as by flaunting a meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince in October 2019. In addition to her panic attacks, Miss Grant began experiencing increasingly severe physical, mental, and emotional symptoms, including sleep disruption, dizziness, exhaustion, rashes, weight loss, hair loss, and migraines. In November of 2019, Miss Grant informed McMahon that her doctor suggested that her symptoms stemmed from trauma and ongoing stress. McMahon mocked her, "Emotional trauma my ass."
Of course.
However, on November 20th, 2019, McMahon insisted that Miss Grant see a physician of his choosing. The physician is referred to herein as celebrity doctor, and that
Dr. Shelby.
and that the facility that the celebrity doctor operated from is referred to herein as alternative clinic. McMahon and the celebrity doctor assured Grant that her bills at the clinic would be taken care of under McMahon's account. At the initial visit, it became apparent to Miss Grant that McMahon and the celebrity doctor wanted Miss Grant to remain in the care of celebrity doctor's practice, and she felt pressure to do so.
Well, yeah, because if she would have went to any other doctor, they would have noticed the physical damage and had to report it. Oh my god.
The celebrity doctor made comments about how they had saved her life, and that often remarked how Miss Grant was unable to even make eye contact with them during their initial session, an obvious sign of trauma. Miss Grant acknowledged that having a relationship with McMahon during visits with the celebrity doctor, who gave a little reaction, save telling her there were many different paths to God and love. Celebrity doctor lavished attention, treatments, and products on Miss Grant, all of which were paid for under McMahon's account. Miss Grant was never provided with any receipts. When Miss Grant was inquired about certain treatments provided, celebrity doctor challenged her on whether she trusted them and postured that if she didn't trust them, then we should part ways right now. At the outset of her care with the celebrity doctor, each session lasted up to 1 hour. Miss Grant would leave feeling exhausted from the doctor's deep dives into her personal and work life as a coach that focused on behavioral science.
Vince is all the bad parts of a cult and the mafia.
It's a lose-lose.
He is the ultimate supervillain. Which, ironically, is what he's wanted in life. Because if you remember, he wanted the $1 Million Man character to be his own. He really was the $1 Million Man. He threw money at things to get it taken care of.
On February 3rd, 2020, McMahon sent a message to Ms. Grant advising that he had been informed by WWE Corporate Officer Number 2 that there were a lot of rumors circulating about McMahon and Ms. Grant.
It's because WWE employee number 1!
McMahon warned Ms. Grant that the rumors were not good for either of them. And then on February 10th, without any advance warning, Ms. Grant was temporarily relocated to the XFL workforce. Ms. Grant, having been desperate to escape the feeling of being trapped in her existence at WWE, applied to remain within the XFL on March 6, 2020. She openly vocalized her desire to remain with the XFL to colleagues, even referred to her state of work at WWE as nothingness. She sought permission to make the change official from WWE employee number 1 and corporate officer number 4 before informing McMahon. Days after this, during which time she had finally told McMahon about her application to remain within the XFL, her request was denied. In the weeks that followed, despite McMahon's warning about the rumors and direction to Miss Grant to play dumb, he began showing explicit photos of Miss Grant to people both inside and outside the company. On March 6, 2020, McMahon sent a lengthy message to Miss Grant describing in detail the circumstances surrounding sharing explicit photographs of Miss Grant to a former WWE referee. A former referee.
Someone that Vince would still talk to.
McMahon described how the WWE referee left to masturbate and told Miss Grant that she had made a perfect stranger very happy.
Oh my god.
Miss Grant initially dismissed this as mere fantasy talk, believing that McMahon would not actually do such a reckless thing, but when voiced apprehension about McMahon sharing naked photos of her with someone she did not know, McMahon's response was not to comfort her, but to assure her of the referee's loyalty to him. This sharing of explicit photos terrified Miss Grant, as it illustrates McMahon's sheer lack of self-control, and it further panicked her that these private and intimate photos, which included her face, were being shared with complete strangers. On March 30th, 2020, McMahon enthusiastically messaged Miss Grant that WWE referee had showed a friend a naked photo of Miss Grant, which marked the beginning of McMahon sharing Miss Grant naked pictures with others, who he encouraged to share with their friends. On March 31st, Miss Grant expressed concern to McMahon that she had no intention of having sex with these strangers and requested McMahon make that message clear, as she felt threatened and distressed by the responses her pictures were getting. She made clear that she did not want any perception of her moving beyond the point of mere fantasy. Shortly after, McMahon surprised Miss Grant with the news that he protected her from a job. He had protected her job from a furlough that WWE would imminently announce.
Yeah, that was around that time.
The furlough affected a large number of employees, and McMahon emphasized that he personally made sure that she would not be one of them, reinforcing her dependency on him, particularly at the majority of the support staff in the legal department, all hired prior to Miss Grant, were furloughed. McMahon became the most important figure in Miss Grant's life after he meticulously asserted power and control over almost every aspect of it. Miss Grant's fears intensified over the consequences that could result from McMahon's actions, particularly by sharing her naked pictures. She became paranoid, completely dependent on and worshipfully devoted to McMahon. He, in turn, pressed forward with exerting his power over Miss Grant as he saw fit. How are we feeling?
Not good.
Not good at all. I just need to take a drink real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
This next section is titled "McMahon Recruits Other Men and Forces Miss Grant into sex trafficking."
Is this where we want to take our break at?
Yeah, let's step away for a sec. I'm gonna rest my voice for a sec. For listeners, I'll be immediate, but we're gonna take a small intermission here.
All right.
Come on out, you rapist!
Well, there he is. Here comes the chairman of the World Wrestling Federation. Wow. Hey. Man.
What have you done to my family?
And we're back, Logan. Nice little break there, little intermission for the listeners at home. It was maybe like 5 seconds. For us, it was a little longer. You know, we had to step away. I think I decided we might become a Minecraft YouTube channel now instead of covering stuff like this. I thought wrestling was supposed to be, fun, and we talk about who does the crazy flips better. But we're doing some heavy shit.
Yeah.
And as I said before we took our break, we're heading into Section G here on the docket, on the case filing here. McMahon recruits other men and forces Miss Grant into sex trafficking. Oh boy, are you ready?
No.
Like I said, this is supposed to be for public's benefit. Because I know not everybody is going to read through all this. Most people probably won't. But if I can make it somewhat easier for somebody to listen to it and learn what actually happened, hear it from the horse's mouth, how horrible it was, then so be it. People like audiobooks, so this is like a long, like a little short audiobook.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what we do here at PWP is give you essays, but on the most depressing of subjects. You figure we've done the Benoit tragedies, we've done the Von Erich tragedies, we did the rise and fall of Jim Crockett Promotions, and now we've got this. We're just full of sunshine.
Looking ahead, this is the section where we kind of get into the text messages. Some of you guys may have already seen these they're being passed around social media, kind of the easiest things to share from this thing. So that's what we're about to get into here. And I'll differentiate if it's a text message or just like a statement. In May 2020, McMahon had recruited an individual whom he manipulatively referred to as his friend to engage in a threesome with McMahon and Miss Grant. The friend turned out to be McMahon's physical therapist at Alternative Clinic and is referred to herein as physical therapist.
Oh my god.
To induce Miss Grant's participation in the threesome, McMahon began referring to Miss Grant as his girlfriend and sent her a large bouquet of flowers. Nevertheless, on May 8th, 2020, Miss Grant expressed apprehension about participating in the threesome. In response, McMahon insisted on that the plans were already made and suggested he would lose a friendship if she did not go through with it.
If you don't do this through with me, I'm going to lose a friend.
We're not going to be friends anymore. On the day of the threesome, on May 9th, 2020, Miss Grant showed up to the condo, but reiterated that she did not want to go through with the act. She expressed fear of being thrown around like a rag doll by McMahon and the physical therapist. After Miss Grant clearly stated she wanted to back out, McMahon responded by telling Miss Grant for the first time that he loved her, stunning her into silence. That's just like total manipulation right there.
Yeah.
That's what manipulators do. McMahon's manipulative tactic resulted in the outcome he wanted, and he led her down the stairs to the bedroom where the physical therapist is already waiting to begin the threesome. Early in the encounter, McMahon immediately directed Miss Grant to lay down on her back in a supplicating position. While straddling over her, McMahon defecated on Miss Grant's head. McMahon left the shower off, but he instructed Miss Grant to remain in place with the excrement in her hair and to continue performing for his friend. While Miss Grant requested protection, none was offered. McMahon and physical therapist actually continued with the threesome and directed Miss Grant's sexual performance for around an hour and a half while she was left covered in feces. Following the threesome on May 11th, 2020, McMahon sent an explicit message to Miss Grant that further detailed his fantasies after seeing her engaged in such sexual relations. The text reads, "I love it. That's you, Janelle. You just can't get enough, can you? And the future's going to be so bad that you'll demand to be fucked twice a day, and not just with blank in a three-way. Why not let others see the beautiful, voluptuous body and watch you shake uncontrollably when you come? They'll go out of their minds. Then I'll find more friends and will tie you up so you're helpless. I'll direct them to have their way, any way they want. Who can make you scream the loudest? Maybe I'll just line them up and..." This is so... "And then in your mouth, your pussy all over your... and all of that at the same time. You'll be covered in and will make you eat all and taste everybody's. The next morning, you'll be a little sore, but you're still going to want more. After all that fucking over and over."
He sounds like that sexually deprived teen the first time he gets like a little bit. And he's like, "Here's everything I want to do." Like, this doesn't sound like the talkings of a 70-ish-year-old man. Like a normal one, I should say.
Yeah, this isn't the talking of somebody that's ever been in a healthy sexual relationship.
No.
McMahon then pressured Miss Grant into several additional threesomes, in large part because she felt she had no other choice, particularly after McMahon's comments that he had personally assured that she had not lost her job.
Alright, so here's my question with this. He participates in threesomes with other men.
Uh-huh.
He calls the sex toys, he names them after professional wrestlers. Is there a little bit of, like, gay in Vince? Like, I know the joke is he loves big, meaty men slapping meat. But...
he might be a little bisexual.
Well, a little bi-curious. But
Yeah.
he'd be the one he'd never admit it. Like, someone would, "Are you Vince?" And they'd be fired.
I just see, like, him, like, damn, you got a nice cock. He's like, "Vince, are you gay?" He's like, "No, I'm not fucking gay. I'm just saying it's..." I just feel like that's how that conversation would go. Her subsequent run-ins with the physical therapist also served as a reminder of how much was at stake if she did not obey. McMahon controlled Miss Grant's employment income, paid for her medical care, circulated naked pictures of her, and ignored her lack of consent for the first threesome. Indeed, when text conversations would begin to cross over from McMahon's fantasies into reality, Miss Grant often attempted to avoid physical encounters with the physical therapist, as on September 23rd, 2020, when she told McMahon there was no room for a third body. After the threesomes began, McMahon became more sadistic, and his fantasies focused on control, such as choking, sensory deprivation, pain, humiliation, and group scenarios in which Miss Grant was to be physically overwhelmed and subservient. Here's another text from Vince. R.E., your last picture. Such an old man way to start that. Response to your last picture, like an email.
Yeah.
You need your panties ripped off and 3 big black dicks in all 3 holes at the same time. Way up your ass as far as they will go, even farther, and the thickest cock goes down your throat so it makes you gag and convulse as those big black cocks pound away. It feels like from the start. You're being assaulted, but it's made you come nonstop. Just one continuous constant. And just before you pass out, those big black squirt there inside you. As you lay on your stomach, is coming out of all your holes. I'll turn you over and jack off all over you.
All right. So this is one of the ones I mentioned earlier. You sent me to kind of give me an idea.
Uh-huh.
You know what this reminds me of? And it's a little throwback for me and you. Remember, like, the child predator stuff that we'd watch on YouTube?
Oh, like Anxiety War and...
Yeah, and Chris Hansen.
Yeah.
Like, this reminds me of, like, the chats that the predators would send to the children. Like, because it'd usually start off with, ooh, I'll give you little kisses. Yeah. And then as it progresses, then it's like, yeah, I'm going to fill you up. Like, Jesus. And the way he types, and I told my wife about this, he types like you would picture an old man typing. All the U's is just a capital U. Yours, you are. Like,
and he's definitely typing. He's typing this with one finger. His phone's in one hand, and he's just tapping the screen with his finger.
He spells pussy Pussey.
With those dumbass glasses he has.
Yeah, where they're on the bottom of his just.
They're on the ridge of his nose.
Typing meme, but it's actually him doing it.
Yeah. What an asshole.
Yeah, it does. It reminds me of a fucking just old man. Or, like I said, this is like a sex-depraved teenager in, like, 2002. I just...
On one occasion, he instructed Miss Grant, do not knock on the door, because if I see you, I will rape you in the hallway.
Oh my God.
I don't know if this is going to be able to stay up on YouTube. I don't know. To leave no doubt regarding the dynamic of their relationship, on May 12th, 2020, McMahon texted Miss Grant, I'm the only one who owns you and controls who I want to fuck you, a theme that was often reiterated throughout their involvement. On June 17th, 2020, Miss Grant sends text to McMahon noting her 1-year anniversary in joining WWE. McMahon ignored her.
Do you think... I want to word it. Do you think he at least tried this with Linda? Or do you think this happened to Linda at all? Like, in the beginning, they just have their...
For Linda's sake, I hope not.
Because from everything... So my wife and I have been watching Law & Order SVU a lot recently, and one thing that they note is when someone's like this sadistic, this means they've done this before. Right? Like, this isn't something... He's not going to send these messages and do these things, like, for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, he is...
Look, I just got your picture about what you're drinking for this pod.
Yeah.
I respect it.
Yeah. It's a little needed.
I have a Mountain Dew, so.
Sorry, Papa Murphy. I know you can usually tell when I'm drinking during the podcast, but this time it's needed. You know, when you listen to this 4, 5, 6 months from now, and you send Anthony that message and say, "Tell Logan to stop drinking on the podcast," this time it's needed.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if he makes it this far into this one. This is kind of, I don't know if it's something he's interested in listening to.
Yeah, yep.
A month later, McMahon reminded Miss Grant about the far-reaching results of his texting out explicit content of her. By now, thousands of men see you every day all over the world. They all want to fuck you. Around this time, McMahon openly shared explicit photographs and salacious stories about Miss Grant with WWE crew at TV tapings, a group McMahon also referred to as her fan club. Indeed, McMahon exuberantly messaged her a truthful story of having just shared her explicit content of her with a group of 12 men on the WWE tech crew and recounted their obscene details he shared with them. So this is another text. I just passed my phone around to a bunch of guys on the tech crew. They were screaming, "OMG, she's fucking beautiful. Look at that ass. I'd like to get that." I paused to count out loud how many guys there were. 12. I then said, "Okay, there's 12 of you, and she would love to fuck each and every one of you at one time." The guys cheered, but she will only do it if she takes 3 at a time.
Oh, my God.
That brought a huge reaction. She wants one deep in her ass and one down in her throat, and one in her, and you can pound her and keep on pounding till you pop. She may scream and
pop.
She may scream and try to say no, although it would be difficult to say anything with a cock down her throat. I then said, "Listen, no matter what, just pound away till you..." Baby, these guys were having a blast with me. Some of them said they didn't believe me. So I said, "You are the greatest fuck in the world. And no matter how much you get, you always wanted more." And I said, "She loves..." Baby, these techs, as well as we call them, were having the times of their life, listening to the stories of my truthful story. I then said you would take a 10-minute break in between each fucking, and then you would get back on your hands and knees with your ass in the air and say, "Okay, I'm ready. Who's next? LOL. I drive them wild, baby." Or I should say, you drive them wild. Just imagine if this really happened, baby, how much you would have coming out of all your holes. On the occasions when Miss Grant informed McMahon that she was physically injured during her sexual encounter, McMahon's responses varied from apologies to non-accountable pushback to blaming impulse control. When encounters were particularly brutal, Miss Grant learned to bookend the truths of her injuries with compliments to create the least amount of pushback from McMahon. However, Miss Grant sustained brutal and painful injuries, including bleeding, swelling, bruising, and spans of incontinence resulting from McMahon's forceful use of his fists, adult toys, and objects unsafe for vaginal insertion or penetration. For instance, on August 28th, 2020, Miss Grant texted McMahon that she was injured during our latest sexual encounter. As a result, McMahon's insisting on penetrating Miss Grant with extra-large sex toys, including a vibrating wand that caused her to panic. McMahon ignored Miss Grant's warnings that the device was not meant for insertion and forcefully shoved the wand inside her so deeply they became stuck. She texted that she was in pain and bleeding a lot between last night and today, and "I'm on the floor right now because I can't get comfortable." And on August 29th, 2020, she texted him an update that she was still really uncomfortable and "I got hurt in some way that I'm having trouble describing." McMahon did apologize and say that sometimes I can get carried away. Section H, McMahon recruits Laurinaitis into his exploitation of Miss Grant and transfers her into Laurinaitis' department at WWE, trafficking and sex acts at WWE headquarters. During this time, Miss Grant became so sick from the stress of the situations that McMahon had subjected her to that her weight plummeted to just over 100 pounds. One distressing event occurred on November 21st, 2020, when McMahon drove Miss Grant to WWE headquarters to fulfill his fantasy of having a sexual encounter with her in his office, causing Miss Grant to suffer a panic attack in the passenger seat while pleading with McMahon to change his mind and drive her back home. McMahon scoffed and gave her an ultimatum: either have the sexual encounter in his office or inside the parked car. Terrified, Miss Grant obeys McMahon's discretion, and they entered W headquarters for the encounter. Further, despite Miss Grant's repeated statements that she did not consent to threesomes with McMahon and the physical therapist, McMahon advised her to others and told her that she found another person to join them. Defendant John Laurinaitis.
Of course.
In November 2020, McMahon pressed Miss Grant to make explicit photos and videos to send to Laurinaitis. McMahon orchestrated exchanges by instructing Miss Grant when to create explicit content for Laurinaitis, including what to say, provided with notes to adjust her performance, and McMahon then facilitated the exchange of explicit content back and forth between Grant and Laurinaitis. Notably, even once phone numbers were exchanged between Miss Grant and Laurinaitis, McMahon insisted that he be privy to any messages that Miss Grant sent to Laurinaitis and demanded that she report back all interactions, further illustrating the level of control he held over Miss Grant. On December 29th, 2020, a threesome was arranged between McMahon, Laurinaitis, and Miss Grant at McMahon's condos. McMahon instructed her to tell Laurinaitis that she was a neighbor and girlfriend working in the legal field, but not at WWE. Shortly after meeting Laurinaitis, Miss Grant asked him if she was the first woman who McMahon had introduced him into such a setting. Laurinaitis failed to respond and shot a look directly at McMahon, who quickly intervened by kissing Miss Grant and initiating the sexual encounter amongst the three of them. Once again, Miss Grant asked for protection, and once again her request was denied after assurances that Laurinaitis was, quote, clean. In the days that followed, McMahon texted her that Laurinaitis hugged me like a bear and said thank you to me about 12 times already. In contrast, Laurinaitis messaged Miss Grant, thanks for the fun afternoon. On or around January 25th, 2021, Miss Grant was reassigned to directly support WWE's new hire, a high-ranking employee with the legal department. On February 5th, McMahon sent Miss Grant to establish a schedule for when other men, including the physical therapist and Laurinaitis, could have sex with Miss Grant, which Miss Grant attempted to rebuff. So some text messages. Exactly, baby, he's not the only one. Blank called me this afternoon begging to eat you and fuck you with his nice and hard dick. She replies, give me another week, baby, and I'll be ready. I'm feeling more like myself. It's not great, but it's getting better. Tell him soon. I've already told him, baby, by the way, Johnny wants Tuesdays, but not this coming one and the occasional Saturday, but maybe I can shift it to Thursday nights. Johnny would like all of the above. Texts like this, a shift schedule, caused Miss Grant to suffer breakdowns over how her original hope for a new life had been reduced to objectified and dehumanized existence, with no way out. On or about March 6, 2021, a second threesome between McMahon, Laurinaitis, and Miss Grant occurred. In March of 2021, WWE had still not hired a replacement after WWE Corporate Officers Number 4's termination in November of 2020. On March 9th, 2021, McMahon informed Miss Grant, still an entry-level coordinator, that the top executives in the company knew about the relationship and their presence in the legal department was effectively delaying the company's efforts to hire a new replacement for this high-ranking official, reinforcing the fact that many within the company were all aware of the circumstances detailed herein. As a result, McMahon stated that the plan was for her to change departments, and he verbally directed Miss Grant to transfer to the Talent Relations Department, reporting to Laurinaitis. On March 10th, 2021, Miss Grant sent McMahon a text message recapping their conversation and expressing shock and a range of concerns, including about Laurinaitis. Essentially, Miss Grant expressed a desire to be treated humanely and taken seriously, which he acknowledged could be an uphill battle. Unfortunately, Miss Grant's transfer to Talent Relations Department came with the expectation from both McMahon and Laurinaitis that she engage with Laurinaitis sexually, both physically. She engaged with Laurinaitis sexually, both physically and with explicit content. On March 10th, WWE Corporate Officer number 2 informed Grant that day that she would officially be moved to Talent Relations and would quickly begin reporting to Laurinaitis. Although details about her role, including a title and salary, were still being firmed up. In essence, Miss Grant found herself in a completely undefined role, except for understanding that she remained a sexual slave to be used and trafficked by McMahon within WWE. On March 12, 2021, McMahon reminded her of the connection between her job, her role as a sexual object. Let's work hard and play hard too, he says in a text.
Yeah.
On March 16, 2021, Miss Grant was directed to pick up a key to Laurinaitis' hotel room and serve herself to him as breakfast before the start of work.
Jesus.
McMahon constantly reinforced the expectation that Miss Grant sexually perform for him and her new boss, Laurinaitis, both in and out of the office. McMahon wrote on March 22nd, "Do you promise to make me proud, baby? Will you show him what a porno star you can be? Will you show off for me like never before? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And on days when he's in town, I want him to fuck you every morning and later in the office too." McMahon also indicated on April 2nd, 2021, Miss Grant should obey if Laurinaitis wanted to bring in yet more men. This is another text Vince sent. Maybe he wants 2 other guys to join you with him. Holy shit. You've told him you would do anything with them, so he's surprised you with 2 others. You would have no alternative than to take them on. OMG, the stories you could tell me then. It makes me want to right now. By the way, I just thought of what I think is an excellent idea. Maybe you can hint that if he knows someone who can be discreet, it might be better if you and Johnny try him out first so you can get more comfortable before he is introduced to me. Actually, that makes total sense, doesn't it? So you can kind of see the layers of separation now. He's trying to form like a sex ring.
Yep.
And if anything goes wrong, he's gonna blame Laurinaitis for it and fire him.
Which kind of happened.
Kinda. So if somebody just doesn't work out and the whole thing blows up, he's never been seen with Vince. So in April of 2021, W's Senior Vice President of Human Resources was fired. The same month, McMahon informed Miss Grant that she'd be given the title of Vice President Operations within the Talent Relations Department. However, days later, McMahon backtracked and said that she would be the Director of Operations instead, to avoid suspicion of a sudden promotion to Vice President. Oh. I see that text you just sent me.
Yeah.
It's okay. Where was I at? During this conversation, McMahon told Miss Grant that he had expressed to other WWE management that he wanted her to reach the level of vice president and spend a year or 2 in the position, as she would be able to take the experience anywhere. Miss Grant left this conversation with McMahon hoping that she could escape the situation with her finances and reputation intact. She just needed to survive until that point. In an April 2021 meeting, Miss Grant and WWE Corporate Officer number 2 acknowledged that the jump initially proposed to Vice President was too big and could put a target on Miss Grant's back. Nevertheless, WWE Corporate Officer number 2 presented Miss Grant with paperwork detailing a base salary increase to $200,000 as Director of Operations. As soon as Miss Grant began working directly for Laurinaitis, forcible touching and overt sexual behaviors became part of daily life when he was in the office. On numerous occasions, Miss Grant was directed to visit Laurinaitis at his hotel room before work to serve herself to him as his breakfast. These devastating experiences made Miss Grant feel that she were being pimped out as an object for sexual gratification for her new boss. Upon information and belief, corporate funds from WWE were used to finance Laurinaitis' hotel stays when these coerced sexual encounters occurred. Per McMahon's instructions, Miss Grant's reported interactions with Laurinaitis back to McMahon, for whom the story served as a source of arousal. The arrangement with McMahon left Miss Grant miserable. The arrangement with Laurinaitis left Miss Grant miserable and enraged. However, in her years of experience with McMahon, she knew that her request to stop would be ignored at best or used to destroy her career and reputation at worst. Miss Grant was further left feeling isolated by colleagues and surveilled by top-level employees within WWE. Professionally and personally, Miss Grant's fate was entirely in the hands of McMahon, Laurinaitis, and other WWE executives who enable her abuse. On May 24th, McMahon messaged Miss Grant to remind her that a mistake could destroy her career and she should pursue verbal communication rather than written when possible. On the text from Vince, those complaints will keep on coming, baby. Just wait and see. I totally understand and agree. R.E. being scared of communication and photos. Johnny gets drunk and sloppy. He could easily make a mistake that could cost him his job and yours too. Verbal communication is the way to go. That said, have you and Johnny talked about breakfast tomorrow? We haven't discussed it at all. It's all up in the air. Johnny complained about getting a new phone and it just arrived. I haven't set up a time to coordinate setting it up with IT because I need him to assure me that he erased everything he's ever saved. Truly, I regret that he ever got pics. It's not worth the stress I'm feeling. I'm done with it.
A little ironic that he acknowledges Laurinaitis gets drunk and sloppy, but he kept him around. But Jim Ross, who was at a pretty high position, got fired for him and Ric Flair drinking at that one SummerSlam panel.
Yeah.
Jim Ross, yeah. Makes me wonder if it's always been like this, and if he asked Jim Ross to do that kind of thing, and Jim's no. And I wonder, and I hate to, think or, say anything, I wonder if that's why he bullied Jim Ross on screen, because he had Ross in his inner circle, but Ross wouldn't do anything like that.
Right. It's possible. McMahon responded that one-on-one counters could stop, but he expected threesomes with Laurinaitis to continue. Section I. The following morning, on June 15th, 2021, at approximately 7:51 a.m., Miss Grant messaged McMahon that due to her work on an important project, she did not want a threesome that week, as a threesome won't set me up for success. It'll knock me out. To avoid pushback from McMahon, Miss Grant offered the following week instead. McMahon and Laurinaitis ignored her plea and brought her into Laurinaitis' office, forcibly touching and undressing her before forcing her to engage in a threesome on a conference room table. Miss Grant pleaded, "No, no, no. Please stop." McMahon responded with, "No means yes." Miss Grant again told them to stop. Instead, McMahon licked his fingers and penetrated Miss Grant and said, "Take it, bitch." With each taking turns restraining her for the other, Laurinaitis then forcibly shoving his tongue, then penis, into Miss Grant's mouth. On June 23rd, 2021, around 11:42 a.m., McMahon directed Miss Grant in the middle of the workday to meet him on a lower floor. When Miss Grant arrived, McMahon led her inside his private locker room, locked the door, and forced himself on her over the massage table. Later that day, $15,000 in gift cards to Bloomingdale's were purchased at McMahon's direction and delivered by McMahon's personal assistant to Miss Grant's office.
Wow.
On multiple other occasions while Miss Grant worked under Laurinaitis, including after McMahon's promise that one-on-one encounters would end, and even after his wife moved across the country to join Laurinaitis, he would call Miss Grant to his office, lock the door, unzip his pants, and instruct Miss Grant to perform oral sex. So, through all this, Miss Grant noticed that the less she sexually engaged with Laurinaitis, the less work she had as Laurinaitis began to belittle Miss Grant in front of colleagues. Fearing for herself and her future, Miss Grant asked Laurinaitis whether he still supported her promotion to vice president. He deflected with an answer about considering all options and changing the topic. Section J. McMahon uses Miss Grant as a sexual pawn to entice world-famous wrestling talent and to keep a WWE superstar under contract.
Oh, boy.
WWE superstar is a famous worldwide as a top talent with WWE, with a large collective fan base that helps generate viewership and drive in-person attendance, all of which enrich WWE and McMahon. Upon information and belief, McMahon began to recruit the WWE superstar for a sexual encounter with Miss Grant while she was still a coordinator in the legal department. By July of 2021, McMahon informed Miss Grant that the WWE superstar would be their next playmate. As in other instances, McMahon described his fantasy of seeing Miss Grant engaged in the unmerciful sexual acts with the W superstar, during which he would, quote, rip her open. McMahon also confided to Miss Grant that he wanted to have the W superstar under a new contract, while the W superstar indicated an interest in a return to other professional endeavors. On or about July 12, 2021, McMahon directed Miss Grant to create a personalized sexual content for the superstar. McMahon shared photos with the W superstar and then informed Miss Grant that he, quote, likes what he sees. On July 21st, 2021, McMahon flew and or caused W superstar to fly on a jet to a local airport and travel into Connecticut across state lines for what McMahon described to Miss Grant as a business dinner, as well as a sexual encounter with Miss Grant in McMahon's condo. Upon information and belief, the dinner was to discuss the superstar's continuing involvement with WWE. Prior to the business dinner with McMahon, the superstar made a brief visit to Miss Grant's building. However, the W superstar did not return to the building for a sexual encounter because he was too intoxicated and he was taken back to the plane. Later that evening, after McMahon recounted the story about his dinner with the superstar to Miss Grant, he sought to salvage the night with the request that they role-play a sexual encounter in which McMahon acted as if he were the WWE superstar.
Of course.
McMahon was so physically rough with Miss Grant during this encounter that Miss Grant begged McMahon to stop numerous times, including loud cries for help, I'm serious, and I'm scared, as he, among other things, penetrated her, fisted her, pulled her hair, pinned her, shoved her, open-palmed, slapped her. McMahon's assault caused Miss Grant to break down weeping and curl into a fetal position with her arms pulled up to protect her face. McMahon alternated between slaps and shoves before admitting that, I'm really fucking up with you right and left tonight, huh? McMahon forbade Miss Grant, forbade Miss Grant into leaving his condo that night, and that she could verbally assure him there wasn't a problem and everything between them was okay. Notably, however, he made no effort to check on her well-being after she left the condo. On August 26th, 2021, WWE held its second biggest annual event, SummerSlam, in Las Vegas's Allegiant Stadium. Around this time, McMahon and the W superstar privately reached an informal agreement about his return. That night, Mr. McMahon texted Miss Grant a reminder that she was an enslaved object to him. I want to drive you lower and lower, so low that you might beg me to sell you. McMahon continued to advertise a sexual encounter with Miss Grant, the W superstar, during the formal negotiation of a new booking contract with WWE. In the text from Vince, here's what Brock said after I told him that part of the deal was fucking you. LOL, that's your turf. She'll be ruined after me and leave your ass. Plus, after me, your tool won't fit in there anymore.
Jeez.
In December 2021, McMahon gave Miss Grant's personal cell phone number to the superstar and promised she'll do anything requested of her. In the days that followed, W superstar revealed a fetish to Miss Grant and tested McMahon's promise that she would do anything, and with a request that she send a video of herself urinating.
What is with these guys and pissing shit?
I don't know. I guess that's why we're not mega successful.
That's the reason.
We're not pissing and shitting on people. Unable to recognize herself, Miss Grant went numb and obeyed. The superstar informed Miss Grant that if she had not complied with the request, the superstar would have lost any interest in her and then called her a bitch. That same month, the superstar expressed to Miss Grant that desire to set a play date and have a sexual encounter. However, a snowstorm changed the superstar's travel plans, and Miss Grant ultimately used the weather and COVID-19 as an excuse to back out. Section K, McMahon tells Miss Grant that his wife has learned about her and pressures her for an NDA. In early January 22, McMahon abruptly distanced himself from Miss Grant, saying that he could not speak to or be in the same room as her. On January 9th, McMahon agreed to speak to Miss Grant. My cat just knocked everything down. On January 9th, McMahon agreed to speak with Miss Grant at his condo. During this meeting, McMahon told Miss Grant that his wife, Linda McMahon, had learned about his relationship with Miss Grant and that he was losing his condo and that she would divorce him.
Oh.
He added, too, that the public divorce would make Miss Grant a headline. Purporting to salvage his marriage and avoid both the negative publicity and other repercussions of a divorce, McMahon wanted to ensure that Miss Grant would remain silent about his personal misconduct in order to preserve his controlling interest in the WWE. McMahon told Miss Grant that if she left WWE and signed an NDA, that he was confident Linda McMahon would not divorce him, and he would remain in the condo, and Miss Grant would avoid reputational harm. McMahon instructed Miss Grant that she would not go back to the office and immediately lessen her involvement on open work items. Miss Grant expressed concerns about both her name being mentioned in the media and the loss of control over her image, especially as McMahon had shared content of her for close to 2 years and the ramifications for her career. McMahon suggested that he would attempt to keep Miss Grant's reputation intact, that he or corporate officer number 1 would personally help Miss Grant find another job. McMahon also instructed Miss Grant not to share the news with anyone and suggested she offer health-related excuses if asked about leaving WWE. Regarding the NDA, Miss Grant asked McMahon, "Is this when Jerry sends the papers?" McMahon nodded and assured that Miss Grant, as they would be in the driver's seat to iron out terms together, but that she would need an attorney to make things official, and approved of Miss Grant asking Celebrity Doctor for an attorney referral. Following this discussion, McMahon led Miss Grant to his bedroom for another sexual encounter.
Of course you did.
Fucking read the room. On January 14th, McMahon sent Miss Grant a to-do list for purposes of effectuating the NDA, such as retaining counsel, and also included an offer for a one-on-one career coaching. McMahon suggested the list had been drafted by corporate officer number 2. Before Miss Grant retained counsel, McMahon discussed the amount of money that would be exchanged for the NDA and settled on a lump sum of $3 million. After Miss Grant told McMahon her initial offer of $1 million was not enough to compensate for the lost earning potential and the fact that she would not be able to continue the promised career trajectory of vice president, as well as failing to last as a director for a full year. Before Miss Grant retained counsel, McMahon called Miss Grant with an update and informed her that the attorney and counsel for WWE insisted on installment payments due to cash flow purposes. When Miss Grant responded that this reasoning did not make sense for a billionaire, McMahon insisted that it was not his idea. On or about January 19th, Miss Grant advised McMahon that she had contacted the celebrity doctor about attorney referral, and on the physician's recommendation, upon McMahon's approval, she signed a retainer agreement with a lawyer later that day. On January 24th, McMahon continued to engage in a sexual text message exchanges with Miss Grant, encouraged her to send an explicit photo to a WWE superstar. McMahon also requested Miss Grant send him content she had sent to that superstar. The negotiations on the NDA were brief, only 8 days. Miss Grant reminded McMahon that the NDA ought to address people who knew about the relationship, including but not limited to corporate officer number 1, number 2, John Laurinaitis, and McMahon's personal assistants. Miss Grant and her attorney sought to incorporate the list of individuals who had knowledge of the relationship into a Schedule A in the NDA. Miss Grant's requested revisions were flatly rejected by McMahon and WWE, who reverted to their original draft rather than incorporate any of her proposed changes, with the exception that, as of the date of the execution, Miss Grant would not speak of the relationship. On January 26th, McMahon articulated that even more pressing need to get the NDA signed immediately, informing Miss Grant that he was under a tight deadline to report pending or threatening legal actions to the WWE Board of Directors, specifically the Audit Committee, and that McMahon and his attorney could not do so unless Miss Grant signed the NDA. He informed Miss Grant that board members were concerned about the delay. Furthermore, McMahon repeatedly pressed Miss Grant to stop her attorney from any further wordsmithing and blamed the attorney for not understanding the urgency of the situation. Also, despite any previous approval, McMahon now expressed that both he and his attorney had concerns about Miss Grant's attorney, warned that her counsel could not be trusted, which in turn caused Miss Grant to question her trust in her personal attorney. On and around January 26th, Miss Grant became so overwhelmed that she asked to simply give notice without the need for a payment, even offering to sign a napkin or a post-it as a sign of goodwill. McMahon flatly rejected her desire to back out. On the 27th, just 8 days after Miss Grant had hired an attorney, McMahon left Miss Grant a lengthy audio message explaining why he needed to go through with the NDA, pushing her to hurry up and sign the NDA, and advising that he would be double fucked if she did not. Presumably referring to both his divorce and the report to the board of directors. Between the 27th and the 28th, there were unresolved edits that led to panicked phone calls, including an attorney confidentiality clause and a signatory line that Miss Grant's counsel said he would never sign. Also, the deadline to sign the NDA was pushed up from January 31st to January 28th. McMahon continued pressuring Miss Grant with calls, during which he pleaded, demanded, threatened, and begged her to sign the NDA, and reminded her that by not signing, she would jeopardize him, the company, and his family, and she would surely become the subject of national headlines and ruin her reputation if she did not sign the NDA by the start of WWE's live programming schedule on January 28th. He reassured her that nothing would change between them, and she would emerge with her reputation intact if she would simply sign the NDA. In a state of mental defeat and fear from McMahon's threats, Miss Grant succumbed to her unrelenting pressure and signed the NDA just before the deadline on the 28th. On February 4th, Miss Grant was wired a $1 million payment as the first installment of the NDA. On the 28th, Miss Grant was wired $10,000 to cover attorney's fees incurred in connection to the NDA. I can't want to say that. WNBA. Both wires were sent with the originator described as Vincent K. McMahon, CO, WWF. And the originator address 1241 East Main Street, Stamford, Connecticut, 06902, United States. On February 9th and 10th, Miss Grant gave notice to Laurinaitis and put Human Resources at WWE on official notice that she was leaving WWE. After signing the NDA, Miss Grant continued to ask about who had told Linda McMahon, and she was concerned about her ability to obtain employment in the future. McMahon responded that it did not matter, and he was tired of her questions.
Jesus.
After the NDA was signed, McMahon, wearing only a white robe, met Miss Grant in his condo to review outstanding business items. As Miss Grant was proceeding to the door to leave, McMahon grabbed her arm before she exited and commanded her to do one last thing and get on your knees. As Miss Grant knelt to the hard floor, barely a few feet away from the front door, McMahon opened his robe and ordered her to, quote, eat him.
Eat him. He does. He talks like a teenager.
Yeah. McMahon grabbed the back of Miss Grant's head and slammed her face into his crotch multiple times until she gagged and pushed him away, telling him to stop as she couldn't breathe. McMahon responded that she wouldn't get away that easy and held her head as he forced himself back into her mouth until she had no air. Miss Grant tried to push him away, but he held her head firmly in place and commanded her to look up, followed by "Take it, bitch." They momentarily made eye contact before McMahon's force caused Miss Grant's body to convulse and retch with tears streaming down her face. McMahon then released his hold and closed his robe as she stood up. After leaving, Miss Grant never saw McMahon again. On March 2nd, 2022, while Miss Grant was away on a trip to Florida, McMahon called her to advise that it would probably be the last time he would hear from him, and if she needed anything, to contact corporate officer number 1 or number 2. Over the course of approximately a half-hour call, McMahon lamented, McMahon, he did some laminating over the call. I gotta get some work done. McMahon lamented both his inability to focus on the upcoming WrestleMania and how his personal life had blown up over the past few weeks. So this is what, WrestleMania 38?
I believe so.
Towards the end of the conversation, McMahon and Miss Grant agreed to resume contact after Mania. He also instructed Miss Grant to continue having sexual relations with other men, including WWE Superstar, in the meantime. On or around March 4th, WWE Superstar messaged Miss Grant that he was in New York. In line with McMahon's orders, Miss Grant texted the Superstar explicit pictures. On March 27th, Superstar reached out to Miss Grant again. Miss Grant interpreted these back-to-back advances as indication of McMahon's continued control. March 30th, the Miss Grant's counsel received a call from McMahon's attorney advising that there had been an anonymous email about the relationship between Miss Grant and McMahon and Laurinaitis. Later, in June and July 2020, stories were published regarding the matter of McMahon's multiple NDAs with various women associated with WWE and others. Miss Grant did not receive another payment under her NDA in February of 2023. Further, despite assurances from McMahon that he would cover her medical care and costs associated with tax liability for the $1 million payment, McMahon has refused to cover these costs. McMahon has continued to pay for Miss Grant's medical care until April 15th, 2022, when it abruptly ceased. Now, this is a part I think you were alluding to earlier. Gifts given to plaintiff during time.
Yeah.
So these are all the gifts that were given from 2019 to early 2022. Examples from items received by Mr. Grant from McMahon in 2019 include alternative clinic medical care and medical and cosmetic services and products, clubhouse access tickets to the Belmont Stakes, WrestleMania private full day, transportation and premium tickets, a $2,000 Nordstrom gift card, and a massive box of Godiva. I don't know what that is. What's Godiva? Godiva?
Good to get Godiva.
Godiva?
It's chocolate.
Okay. I guess I don't buy chocolate that much. Gifts for Miss Grant from 2020 for Miss Grant from McMahon in 2020 include $20,000 towards surgery, pearl/diamonds paved lariat necklace from Better Ridge in Greenwich, Connecticut, a blue cashmere knee-length cardigan, a blue Burberry check cashmere scarf, a blue cashmere fur hat, gray cashmere shawl, a pair of sunglasses, those are all from Nordstrom, cable knit throw blanket, and a large bouquet of flowers delivered approximately every other week. Items received by Miss Grant from McMahon in 2021 include a 2022 BMW 430xi,
Wow.
a $5,000 gift certificate to the Lanphier Spa, 2 private chef catered dinners in McMahon's condos, gold and diamond paved paperclip necklace from Better Ridge in Greenwich, $15,000 in Bloomingdale gift cards, food assortment display, an antique tea ceremony set from Saudi Arabia, and then again large bouquet of flowers every other week. Just wrapping it up here. Just some of the Section 3. Miss Grant was groomed and cursed by McMahon and Laurinaitis, and the WWE stood by and facilitated the efforts to keep Miss Grant employed by WWE and ensure McMahon's continued sexual exploitation. In addition to what Miss Grant and her medical providers who examined her found the abuse will testify to, there's ample other evidence of Miss Grant's mental state and her attempts to avoid the unfortunate circumstances she found herself in. In January 21, she sent a text message to her resident manager, if you remember him, stating that she was miserable at WWE. I don't say it to Vince, but as grateful as I am for my job and my salary, I am miserable. Mismanaged all the time. They admit they don't know what to do with me. Nobody gave a fuck when I was harassed and retaliated against, to the point my reputation was questioned and my work was taken away. As further alleged throughout this complaint, Miss Grant was frequently referred to as McMahon's bitch. She was often subjected to this treatment. She was routinely directed by McMahon to engage in sexual contact with other men. Some of the stuff we kind of read through, so I'm trying to skim through it. Further, at nearly all relevant times, Miss Grant was an employee at WWE and reasonably expect at minimum to lose her position if she did not comply with McMahon. Section 4, McMahon controlled WWE during Miss Grant's employment. As detailed herein, WWE knew of McMahon's illegal conduct and did nothing to stop it. This is self-evident from the numerous executive-level board members who were privy to McMahon's involvement with Miss Grant, as well as his prior encounters involving sexual misconduct. For instance, in around March 2021, Miss Grant introduced herself to a WWE corporate officer number 1 when they passed one another in the hallway. Corporate officer number 1 responded by telling Miss Grant that they knew exactly who she was. Corporate officer number 1 obtained an office suite on the executive 4th floor of the company headquarters on 1241 East Main Street. Meanwhile, Miss Grant's cubicle in the company's legal department was in a different building, 1266 East Main, and across the street from the WWE corporate officer's office. Miss Grant had no physical presence at 1241 East Main Street until the beginning of February 2021, where she began to report to an attorney who kept office in both buildings.
Oh.
Given that corporate officer number 1 is a very high-ranking WWE officer, Miss Grant was an entry-level coordinator in the legal department. It is unusual that this officer would know who Miss Grant was at all at that point, except corporate officer number 1 knew of Miss Grant at least part by hearing of the ongoing exploitation by McMahon. Let me see. So I'm going to try to skim ahead here, because a lot of stuff is kind of just rehashing what we already talked about. This is a section that's just detailing how these officers would know who she was before even working in that building. McMahon's abuse of Miss Grant did not come as a surprise to anyone at WWE, because he had faced numerous prior accusations of sexual misconduct, including in 1994, former WWE referee Rita Chatterton, alleged that McMahon had raped her after luring her into a limousine to discuss her career. She recounted it for the New York Magazine. I was forced into oral sex with Vince. When I could not complete his desires, he got really angry and started ripping off my jeans. Pulled me on top of him and told me again that if I wanted a $500,000 a year contract, I had to satisfy him. He could make me or break me, and if I did not satisfy him, I was blackballed. That's it. I was done. In February 2006, the Palm Beach Post reported that McMahon had shown nude pictures of himself to a tanning booth attendant at Tanza Bar in Boca Raton, Florida, and subsequently made unwelcome advances and finally cornered her into a tanning booth and groped her. A former spa manager at California Resort accused McMahon of assault at the resort in 2011. To further illustrate knowledge of the culture of sexual misconduct at WWE, top-level executives not only failed to properly investigate abuse, but also compounded Miss Grant's suffer by making public statements that trivialized the harm perpetrated upon her. Okay. Yes. Switch ahead a little bit. So this part's about the NDA. Nothing worth really noting, other than he paid $1 million, but failed to make any payments after that, including an installment of $500,000 that was to be paid within 10 days of February 1st, 2023. That did not happen. Section 6, Miss Grant's life after the abuse and resulting damages. As detailed herein, Miss Grant was exploited during a time with employment with WWE and subjected to countless depraved, humiliating acts, resulting in severe trauma. Her trauma was so severe that she required extended inpatient treatment. Today, she lives with so much anxiety and depression that she's unable to leave her residence for weeks at a time out of fear and PTSD. Due to this trauma and inability to leave her home, Miss Grant was terminated from employment on January 27th, where she not only lost her dream job of managing her building, but the only job she could procure without the need of any references. Miss Grant's lost income is $80,000 per year. The severe restrictions in the NDA have created a wedge in all of Miss Grant's relationships and left her in a perpetual state of isolation as her family has passed away and she cannot and does not lean on the support of the community due to the NDA's restrictions. Furthermore, she has experienced weight loss, insomnia, rashes, flashbacks to her exploitation, nightmares, panic attacks, and depression. Miss Grant will go days without brushing her teeth, taking a shower, or washing her clothes. On many days, she does not leave her bed. Miss Grant will prove at trial that she will need a lifelong treatment because of the pain and suffering inflicted upon her by defendants. Then there's the cause of action. Declaratory relief, and they're just saying that the NDA is now void. There's a Speak Out Act against McMahon and WWE. This next section kind of just goes into what the Speak Out Act is. Count 2, that it's also voided under common law. So the next couple pages just about that. Kind of legalese stuff we'll skip over.
Legal mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. Let's see. We might be coming to the end here. So I guess this is kind of important in regards to WWE. She's claiming that Miss Grant's injuries and damages were caused by the negligence of WWE, its employees and agents, for those whose negligence WWE is liable for, in the following ways: WWE, by commission and omission, allowed and tolerated sexual assault and humiliation and fostered a culture in which such acts would be tolerated. WWE, by commission and omission, retained McMahon and Laurinaitis despite actual and or constructive knowledge that their propensity to entice, recruit, force, and or coerce women into sexual acts based on the promise of higher job security and advancement within the WWE, and failed to warn Miss Grant of the risk of harm to which she was subjected while employed by WWE. WWE owed Miss Grant a duty of care. It breached that duty, and its breach caused Miss Grant to suffer the acts, injuries, and damages considered in this complaint. So she's also filing civil battery against McMahon in WWE, against Laurinaitis in WWE, intentional and neglected infliction of emotional distress against McMahon in WWE. The same thing against Laurinaitis.
What do you think about 10 a.m. tomorrow? The announcement, 9 a.m. What time do you think?
I don't know if it will be today technically, because we come out on Friday. Well, it may come out while this is being posted. They might wait until Monday. They might push the ball, and push it back farther. But yeah, that is essentially the entire case. The last 15 pages or so we kind of skimmed over because it's kind of just going through each count that they're bringing across McMahon and WWE and Laurinaitis. They kind of go into individually, like they're going for negligence, participating in the venture of violation of the TVPA Act. What else? Declaratory relief and we already read all that. So that's the entire complaint filed for Janelle Grant against World Wrestling Entertainment, LLC, Vince McMahon, and John Laurinaitis.
This almost couldn't come at a worse time for Vince, because I mean, the head of TKO Endeavor has already talked about how Vince embarrassed him, and now all this is coming out days before the second biggest event, which I'm sure Endeavor's going to take note of. We actually mentioned on our Royal Rumble predictions that Brock Lesnar would be a possible surprise entrant. I've read multiple articles about how now the future planned Brock Lesnar Gunther match is in limbo. Probably won't happen because of Brock being mentioned in this. And the issue, and I mean, I don't necessarily blame the company, especially since he is named. And it's clearly him. I mean, Brock is named, but at the same time, a lot of the insinuations on who the talent is, it's clearly Brock. At first, when I was reading the info, it mentioned a UFC WWE star. This was around the time of Cain Velasquez, and I also realized Daniel Cormier was kind of being brought in around this time. But it's certainly Brock.
Yeah, it has come out that people have named Brock in it, like other wrestlers. So it's 100% Brock, but
and the dots are kind of connected because everyone always found it weird that when Vince first retired or Brock stormed out, right? And they had to bring him back.
Yeah.
And people knew he was a Vince guy, but it seemed a little brash for someone who liked money like Brock did. And, I mean, just, all these dots keep getting connected about Vince stuff for the past 5 or so years. It also makes you wonder if this is why Dwayne Johnson was brought in to be on the board. We've mentioned before in other podcasts how it was a little suspicious that right before Vince had to retire, take his leave, whatever you want to call it, Stephanie was brought back. And now you're bringing in, someone who can run things. He's got a good relationship with Triple H. He's got a good relationship with Nick Khan. He's got one with Dana White. I mean, too coincidental. I find it funny that Vince did everything in his power to come back, and now he's going to lose even more.
I think he has to be gone for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Lance Storm said today on our Wrestling Observer Live, he said, I think there needs to be legitimate cleaning house of anyone who covered anything up. Who knew about this? This is absolutely disgusting and horrible, and Vince McMahon needs to be gone and done. I hope there's criminal charges brought, if any of this is even remotely true.
Yeah, like I said, this has to be the final nail in the coffin for Vince, and really anyone, like Lance Storm said, that's still in the company, that's still involved. We've kind of speculated throughout this that maybe names like, a Kevin Dunn, who was recently let go, could potentially be involved because he was in Vince's inner circle. I've sent you a couple names, and they make sense for the time period, for the longevity of working for the company. Won't really say any right now, but I have sent them to you. I do kind of have evidence of what you've said. It'll be interesting to see if any of these people do make statements.
Yeah. If any of them come out, we'll post our messages.
Yeah.
Just kind of like I told you so, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, and I hate to say it, but it's definitely a bad time for this to happen for the WWE. With, like I said, the Rumble being this weekend, Brock versus Gunther, or supposed to be a big match, supposedly. But then again, it wasn't too recently that there was the rumor of Gunther versus Rollins at Mania, right? And everyone wondered why it shifted to Gunther versus Rollins, Rhodes versus Punk. Maybe the WWE was tipped off, or they knew Brock's name was going to be involved, so they kind of yanked the plans. Because that's one of those matches that's been talked about for about a year now. More than a couple of years, but it's supposed to be at this Mania. I don't know. There's just a lot of happenstance, a lot of speculation. Curious to see how Vince retaliates, I guess. Is he going to try and retire again before they fire him? He couldn't sell it to the Saudis. Which, hell, who knows? Now, my big Vince McMahon theory is he was trying to sell it to the Saudis so he can move over there and avoid any charges.
Maybe.
I don't know. It's just it's awful. And like I said, for those like a Paul Levesque, it's gotta be hard. Not only trying to secure your job, keep it going, keep the company going, then have to go home at night and talk to your kids about how Grandpa's a piece of shit.
There's a statement that came out from the attorney representing Mrs. Grant.
Okay.
Ann Callis of the Holland Law Firm. Today's complaint seeks to hold accountable two WWE executives who sexually assaulted and trafficked plaintiff Janelle Grant, as well as the organization that facilitated or turned a blind eye to the abuse and swept it under the rug. She's an incredible, private, and courageous person who has suffered deeply at the hands of Mr. McMahon and Mr. Laurinaitis. Miss Grant hopes that her lawsuit will prevent other women from being victimized. The organization is well aware of Mr. McMahon's history of depraved behavior, and it's time to take responsibility for the misconduct of his leadership. So it sounds like they're going hard after not only McMahon but even WWE as an organization.
Yeah.
And like we said before, Brad Shepard, that piece of shit, was the one a while ago. I don't remember how long ago it was. Last year when it was first coming out. I think I said it earlier. He's the one that exposed her identity earlier in an attempt to scare her. Vince McMahon's spokesperson issued a statement as well.
Okay.
Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. This is the only thing that's said. This lawsuit is replete with lies, obscene made-up instances that never occurred, and a vindictive distortion of the truth. He will vigorously defend himself.
Interesting. I'm almost certain at this point that none of it are lies. But I'm also sure, like you said, Vince is going to try and point the finger at everyone but himself.
Yeah. I think it's funny that he's saying that it's lies when there's literally text messages.
Yeah.
So. In other news, Mustafa Ali debuted in TNA today.
I saw that.
Good for him.
He got out. This kind of makes Eric Young look like a martyr because if you remember, he left the WWE because he didn't want to work for Vince McMahon anymore. I'm just clock's ticking. I'm waiting to see if when I wake up if he's already canned, if it'll be 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., if they're going to wait and do it after the Rumble, if they're going to try and do it before the Rumble. Kind of funny that going into the 40th WrestleMania, Hogan and McMahon both are, McMahon for sure, very unwelcome within the organization that they quote-unquote built.
Yeah, crazy. I think it's probably, I guess, about to wrap it up. We kind of ran pretty long. This is longer than normal podcast. It's going to take forever to upload.
Yes.
But if this is type of content you enjoy, or if you are appreciative of the effort we just put in here.
Yeah, so I don't think they'd enjoy the content. This is the type of content you enjoy, probably find some help. But yeah, if you enjoy us, if you enjoy wrestling, if you enjoy us going a little more serious every so often, I think some of the views on the Benoit and the Von Erich episodes show you do. Like, follow, subscribe on all platforms that you find the PWP Pro Wrestling Proverbs name.
Yeah, and for our hardcore fans out there that will listen to this one day, obviously with this has kind of pushed back the content we have planned out for this week. So the Hulkamania Part 2 will be uploaded probably early next week or this weekend, and then some of the stuff that we're supposed to record tonight will be pushed back into later next week. So everything's getting pushed back just a little bit, but that Hogan Part 2 episode will be out sometime this weekend, maybe Monday at the latest. We'll kind of see how things go. And then obviously the PWP Top 25 will wrap up here over the course of the next few days. So thanks for tuning in. Rate, subscribe, comment. Link tree down in the description.